in there.
I know, I hear it. Thanks for coming.
I'm excited.
Yay. Okay. Let's see. We got a couple other people. Hey, Devin, how are you?
I'm doing well. Just coming off the EdTech Smackdown that we just ran. Really great. We had about 250 people join in with a lot of
Awesome.
other innovators. Really fun events. We're able to produce that and maybe the start of something.
I love it. How fun. What a great turnout right now. That's what we're finding out is that, people are wanting, it's a little overwhelming with everything in the inbox, but once they get there, everybody's super stoked on stuff. So
That's right.
yay. We got Kristen here too. Hey, Kristen, how are you?
Hey, I'm good.
Just good to have you here. Hanging in there?
Time. Yeah. Hanging in there. Happy to be doing something with Innovator Google.
Awesome. So great to have you here.
Yeah, I want to check out the Smackdown sometime, Devin, if it becomes a thing. That sounds awesome.
Oh yeah, drop a link in, Devin, or if there's anything to watch that if it was recorded or anything.
Yep, it was recorded on YouTube. I think that's the last of the talking I'm going to do because I was screaming my head off like a lunatic during this. My voice is completely gone now. So
nice.
I will link to the. We created a web.
Awesome. Thanks, Abid. And I see Alice joining us from Brazil. Hi, Alice. How are you hanging in there? Everything going
Wendy.
Okay?
Yes, everything is fine. We're under lockdown, so I haven't seen anyone besides my cats and my husband.
And how are you holding up? Do you still love your cat and your husband?
I do. Actually, I do. Yeah, my cats are sorry, but sometimes they're not so nice. And I want to throw them out, but I can't because I love them too much. But yeah, we're holding up.
Yeah, I think all cats are a little bit upset that this is all happening and excited for it to end when they get their kingdom back, for sure.
I'm sure that sometimes they're plotting to throw me out of the house because I'm taking too much of their space in their house, not my house. But cats are like that.
Thanks, Alice. All right, I think we got, and then Cindy's in here. Hey, Cindy, how are you?
Hey everyone, how are you? We're doing good.
Good to hear.
Yeah, my son's joining us. His name's Christopher too, and he noticed that Christopher's doing this talk.
Christopher on Christopher Action. Maybe your Christopher will be a doctor one day too, Cindy. Hey, buddy. How are you liking learning from home, Chris?
Uh-huh.
You like it?
Uh-huh.
Yay!
Right.
Thanks for coming. Bye, Christopher. All right. Yay. Thanks, everyone, for letting us check in. It's so good to hear everybody's voices. We got Dave on the line. Hey, Dave, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Thanks for coming. Good evening. All right. I think we did our hellos for everybody. Thanks, guys. This is our very first Innovator Spark series just for innovators. We're trying this out. Chris is our amazing guinea pig. Our goal was looking at our end of the year survey. Folks wanted some learning and development opportunities specific to innovators. And so we've got a really cool lineup. Some of you on the call actually are going to present as well throughout the year. We got Alice on the call. She's going to do some UX design for us in a few weeks. So do sign up for more of these. Abid here is going to do inspiration with the PLN. Devin's going to do reevaluating learning spaces. So thanks everyone for being here and for contributing to the community. We already went around the room, but at least this is a really cool opportunity for you to connect with innovators in different countries out of your cohort. So if you could just drop in the chat, because we got JD in the Philippines at 11 p.m. We got folks from all over. So just drop your cohort, what your role is this year. Go ahead and drop your Twitter handle too. This might be a good chance if you've met a new innovator you haven't met before. Maybe at the end of today's presentation, you might want to connect about a new idea with each other. So drop that in the chat. Oh, thanks, Abed. I think that's an old screenshot. Oh, hey, Frederick. Great to have you in here. Just saw you come in. Lots of NYC in here. Very cool. Hey, Andrea. Hey, we got Priscilla coming too. Welcome, everybody. As you're coming in, go ahead and just...
Hi, people.
Hi. Welcome. Go ahead and drop your intro into the chat.
Woohoo, more people from Brazil arriving.
I know we got a couple folks from Brazil. Wonderful. Awesome. Dave dropped in his podcast there too. I love it. Don't forget to drop in your Twitter handles in here, folks. Or if you're promoting something right now, like the Tech Slam, anything that you want to share, this is a great group to do that. Perfect. All right, all. We do have a fun door prize at the end, a book related to Dr. McGee's talk today. With that, I'll kick us off. So we're going to talk today with Dr. Christopher McGee, ATX 14, right before it switched over to the Innovator Academy. And he's going to talk to us about, it's an idea, it's a solution, is it a company? What is it that you all have? And this might be, a lot of you are in your year right now where you're in the throes of your project, or you might have been from a few years back and you might have an idea rolling around, and it's always hard to think about what to do with it. And this is something that a question we always get from innovators is what next, or what do I do? I've got a good idea. So Chris is going to run us through some little thought protocol about, does it have startup potential? Why would you want to do a startup? Should it be a nonprofit? And do you want to even make it a job for yourself? I don't think we have anyone on our call from our, there's so many great examples from the innovator community. I think Ready Learner one with Christine Lyons-Bailey and Jesse Lubinsky and Micah Shippey. That's kind of front of mind, a really smart innovators who, Andrea, I'm just going to mute you really quick, who went ahead and started a company. So I'm excited. I think this is super timely. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, awesome. Welcome to everyone all over the world. This is Chris McGee from beautiful, cold St. Louis, Missouri. In my workspace, as my 6- and 4-year-old call it. And I'm sure at some point in time in this workshop, I will be interrupted and have to mute myself and awkwardly redirect a 4-year-old from doing something they're not supposed to be doing. So that should be fun. The joys of working from home. Yay! So just a little bit about me. I work in a small school district. We have 2,600 kids, kindergarten through 12th grade. I serve as the executive director of academic and student services, which basically means if it involves learning or supporting kids in some way, I'm involved in it, which is fun. It's a big job, especially right now. And I sit at this chair in my basement. And most of the time don't get up from this spot unless somebody's in trouble around the house. I did, as you heard, go through the Innovator program back when it was a Google certified teacher in beautiful Austin, Texas. And I've taught kindergarten. No, I'm kidding. There's no way my head could do that. I've taught middle school and high school in the classroom, and then was an administrator for kindergarten through 5th grade, as well as middle school, as well as high school. So I've had a little bit of experience in that K-12, just about every level, and feel like I know a little bit and just enough to get me in trouble. So I wanted to do this concept and this work only because I feel like I've made a ton of mistakes, and I'm happy to share every single one of those. And the one thing that I have sort of in my back pocket is we started a event that we did sort of yearly, an in-person event using the EdCamp model. And then that grew to providing last year over 30 events for professional learning, both online and in person. And that it formed eventually into a company, and that company eventually transitioned to a nonprofit. So we have continued to evolve as an organization, and can tell you all about the joys of that. But that is my other job, because as you heard, you probably even hear in the background is my 4-year-old is, dad first, work in the school district second, and then third is supporting our organization and growing that. So that's getting us started, and doing a quick introduction. So good, nice. So I figured we'd start out just talking a little bit about the entrepreneurial mindset. So when I'm going to put this out there, and then have you guys respond either in the chat, or if you are willing to unmute yourself and put this out there. What do you think is a key aspect to be an entrepreneur? What do you think that is? Maybe it's an attribute, maybe it's a skill. Put that in the chat, and also if you're willing to unmute yourself, we take about 3 people to unmute themselves and jump in.
I think you have to, hey, this is Nicole from Texas, and I think you probably should not be afraid of failure, because that's going to come again and again and again.
Amen. Thank you, Nicole. Love it. Let's get 2 more.
I feel like another part of it is Devin. This is Devin Rosser from Bakersfield. I feel like a part of it is access, not just access to like funding or capital that will allow you to move forward with your vision independently, but also access to people, to networks, to support structures that are going to allow you to develop relationships that are going to push you forward, so that you can continue to connect independently, without being kind of too subservient to one group or organization.
Awesome. 1 more. Jump in.
I think, Abid Patel here from London. I think a key attribute is definitely thinking outside of the box, not being afraid to push the bar, going out of comfort zones. Coming back to what Nicole said about the thick skin, because I've definitely learned in my everyday life that, trying to push forward, especially with all of the COVID-19 stuff going on, and how distance learning has kind of forcefully kicked off. Someone from Google posted on Twitter a few weeks back, saying the "I told you so" is very strong here, and definitely being able to be comfortable in pushing the bar and knowing that you're going to get pushback, but being able to keep at it and doing what you do.
I love it. I added an article in the chat, and as we go throughout the day today, I'm going to be putting some resources in the chat. So feel free to click on that link and throw it in a tab somewhere and come back to it later. But it's just a Forbes article that talks about some of these tips for growing that entrepreneurial mindset. So you guys nailed a lot of those in regards to having a thick skin. One of the things that the Forbes article talks about is putting yourself into challenging situations. Some of the most difficult things I've had to do is basically do the elevator pitch, that concept of, okay, people don't know what your company is. How do you tell them what your company is, your idea, your solution in the shortest possible time frame? Because they've got a million things coming at them. So yeah, that's a really difficult thing. Oh, so okay, Google is listening to me in the background. Nice. Thank you. Okay, Google, stop. Awesome. Read on a daily basis is another key fact that is super, super important. So whether you set up a Google alert to send you articles around specific topics, or you subscribe to different groups like this, where you can read, and consume different ideas that are out there. Approach problems from all sides. You guys talked about that around being flexible. I saw in the chat the ability to pivot. Nice job, Alice. That's a great one. Because what we're finding in our organization that is now 4 to 5 years old, Leah, I have to redirect my 4-year-old. Shh. Thank you. Okay. She gets like, eventually she gets so excited that like let it go will just start happening. And we are into the unknown, like all the frozen things. Okay. So we got to approach the problems from all sides. We have to be able to look at whatever your idea is and recognize that the fourth or fifth iteration of that is probably going to end up being what's happened. And then always be in motion. Provide value for not only your current real-time job, but also your region or whoever it is you're trying to serve. Once you've sort of identified the idea or the solution, always be in motion seeking to provide value. Oh, I love that question from Wendy. Nice job. Where do you read your best information? I'll add that there's always a list of newsletters and there's always a list of podcasts out there. So find the way that works for you. If you're anything like me, what you'll do is you'll get really excited about a podcast for a month. You'll get all into it. And then next thing you know, like that has sort of waned a little bit. And then now you're reading newsletters. And then eventually in a couple months, you come back to podcasts. So put those ideas of some of your best subscriptions, hashtags, podcasts in the chat. So that way we can all benefit from those ideas. Love it. Cool. So why I wanted to do this is recognizing that I am not an expert. In fact, one thing that I want to share is I did not go to business school. I never took a business course. And I didn't understand what the letters ROI meant. And it means return on investment. So if I'm putting time into something, what am I getting out of that? But I knew I had enough failure stories to share that I figured we can probably go through that. So now's a good time to pause and see if there's a question from the group that we can pivot on to and talk a little bit before we get into some of the content and looking for today. So throw a question in the chat or unmute yourself and give us a question to get started before we get rolling. All right, I feel like I've done the official wait time. Did I do the wait time okay? Give me a thumbs up there, right? Right on. Okay, so let's get going. So how do you know if what you're thinking about is an idea, a solution, or a company? So I had this, this concept of the old, I'm about 40 years old, but the old Superman concept, like it's a bird, it's a plane. And I recognize that as a very American correlation. So we have an international group here. But that concept was interesting in identifying Superman, a person flying in the sky, and that fleeting moment of him crossing over an area of the United States was that same sort of conversation that I thought about having here as a group. Is like, is it an idea? Is it a solution to a problem? Or does it have something more to it that it's a company? So that basically was the impetus for starting this conversation. So everything starts with a problem. So let's stop and pause there for a moment. What is a problem that you are trying to solve? Whether it's a company you've already started, maybe it's a solution that you're already working on, maybe it's your how might we statement that you are engaging. But if you would take a moment and put it into the chat about what is a problem that you are working on right now. Maybe it's like I said, it's your innovator project. Maybe it's something that's happening right now in school. Maybe you're trying to provide PD in a Google Meet setting and you're trying to figure out the best way to do that. What is a problem that you're trying to solve? All right. So as you're typing those, something to think about is that no matter the size and the scope of the problem that you are working on, all of them are equally valuable. You might solve the problem and then solve the next problem and then solve the next problem. Then you realize after a while, like you're pretty good at this. And then that grows into something where you've got sort of a portfolio of solutions and problems that you've solved along the way. But when you're looking at a problem and you're trying to solve it, one of the things that you often need to do, and we heard this from, I think it was Devin, that talked about getting out there and having access to a lot of people. So one of the best things to figure out where you're going with, is it an idea, is it a solution, is it eventually a company, is getting out there and interviewing people. The first thing I did before I recognized that I wanted to start a company was that I wanted to go talk to people who have started a company. So we had a co-working space here locally that I was able to go to and talk to a bunch of people that all had various levels of success with starting a company. I also looked at some of the mom and pop shops that were around here, and I asked their owners if I could ask them a couple questions, ask them what they're working on, what problems have they solved, what have they recognized. That was one of those things that I really needed to ask a lot of questions. Since I didn't have a business background, I knew I was at a tremendous disadvantage. So I needed to go out and connect with as many people as possible. Now, what's interesting is about halfway through asking all those questions, I recognized I probably should have been writing down the names and the contact information of all the people I've been interacting with, because eventually I needed to come up with a board. So to form a nonprofit, you need to have a board of directors, and that needs to be something that I needed. Well, eventually I got to see that all those people that I was asking questions, advice, how they started the company, were all people that would eventually be a part of the board. And there's a great quote that I've stolen and used a number of times. It says, if you want money, ask for help. And if you want help, ask for money. Because this is a really interesting concept. So if you're a nonprofit like me, I don't go out asking for donations. I'm asking, hey, here's a problem. Can you help me solve it? And eventually somebody will pony up the support, financial support, to be able to support it. Now, if you go out and say, hey, I need $1,000 to do this, everybody will tell you immediately the 15 ways that you can do that without the $1,000. So it's an interesting concept and dichotomy that if you want money, ask for help. And if you want help, ask for money. It's oftentimes like if you are alone and nobody's around you and you start playing solitaire, immediately somebody's going to show up and tell you exactly what move you need to do next. That's an often joke that I use, is that people will always tell you their advice, whether you want it or open it up or not. So if you want that advice, it's a great way to ask them for a donation or ask them for help. So let's talk a little bit about ideas, and let's shift on to that concept. So finding the best ideas means having a ton of ideas, okay? The best thing you can do to have a good idea is have a bunch of ideas and just be a bad idea factory. I was described by a colleague as having what's called ISD. This is a clinical diagnosis called idea surplus disorder, which is what I have. And I would be glad for you to share that, because you probably have the same thing. If you're anything like me, you have got like 50 ideas on how we might solve different problems. So you might suffer from ISD. But when you have all those different ideas and you pitch all of them to different concepts and different places and to different people, eventually you're going to get some feedback on which one of those have a little bit of traction, have a little bit of interest. So the best way...
Dave had a good question about maturity with ideas. How do you know one is matured enough from just being in your head to being ready to grow some roots?
That's a great, Dave, awesome question. How do you know if an idea is mature enough to become venture worth pursuing? My big key with that has always been two things. One, share that idea as much as possible with as many people as possible, because they'll give you the feedback on whether or not it is ready to go or what pieces you're missing. Because if you pitch it out there and somebody goes, oh, okay, that's cool, and then walks away, like that it's missing some key parts, and that gives you some feedback to figure out what's happening. And then the other piece of the puzzle is precrastinate on it. And there's a whole bunch of research on putting it in your mind and working on it through your subconscious, both actually sitting down, but also just letting it marinate, allows you to refine your pitch and allows you to really figure out what is the piece of it that really has the legs to move forward. So think about it a lot, work on it in your free moments, and pitch it to as many people as possible. So that way you can get feedback on what makes sense and what doesn't. Dave, it's a great question. One of the things we've struggled with is, from a company standpoint, what is the piece of, like, what happens? How do we get feedback on that to create the next experience? Like, what is that cycle of learning that happens within our company? We really don't have a product that we're shipping. So we're not shipping a widget or a gadget, a breakout box or anything like that. We don't have that. We have in-person experiences. And those in-person experiences require a cycle of learning to know where do we need to go next. So think about what that cycle of learning is for your idea to know how does it move to the next phase. Wendy, great job jumping in when I didn't see something on the chat. Love that. Cool. All right, I'm gonna put in another article that I liked. For you to know how you might select a best idea. So one of the things that I really love doing is, I didn't spell article right, fix that. One of the best ideas that I have in regards to the maturity is build a prototype. You know, you have all the tools in the world that you need to build a prototype. I don't have it sitting next to me. My 4-year-old was working on taking a box and building a car out of that box. You also have all the tools you need. Hey, I've got this idea for a company, but I'm going to need to build it in Google Sites. Great. Like, build a model of it in Google Sites and ship it off to your friends to have them see. So I love it with the idea of using the tools that you have to build different versions of that and get it out there. One of the problems that I'm working on, and that I think is really, really valuable, and that is a problem that I'm seeking to solve, is a concept around PLCs. So our district has a professional learning community. There are some really tangible steps and processes, but if you work in a school district, you probably have heard of PLCs, and you probably recognize that adults do them wrong. So how do we teach in a way that can provide just-in-time resources to improve that experience for educators? So one of the things I'm working on is the concept of a deck of cards. So if I have a deck of cards, and you know the concept, and you've probably played the game Uno, where you know, like, if you have a red card down, you can only play a red card. There's some sort of progression and logical connections that need to be made. So, well, in a PLC, there's a linear step and a linear progress that needs to happen. So if everyone had a deck of cards to help them through that meeting process, eventually the deck of cards will be obsolete, but it can teach as you are having the meeting and improve the meeting experience in order to benefit the learning of all kids. So that's an example of an idea that I have. It isn't done in any way, shape, or form, but I'm sharing it now. It's being recorded, and maybe, just maybe, somebody in this group of 25 that are here on this call might also be like, hey, a deck of cards isn't a bad idea. I'd like to work with you on that. And then all of a sudden now a group of us are working on a problem, trying to solve a problem. And I don't necessarily need it for my PLC, but just like there are suits in Uno or suits in a deck of cards, maybe I want to do a deck of cards around this sort of meeting, that maybe a data team or something like that. So the suits can be the meeting progression or different stimulus or prompts in order to have a more effective meeting. So that's an example of an idea that I have. It's out there, and the best problem to have is, in my idea surplus disorder, is to get it out of my head and say it into the universe. And then maybe if it's a good idea, some of you will tell me it's a great idea, do it. Maybe some of you will add in the chat and be like, yeah, that's kind of, it's interesting, but no, it doesn't have legs. So that's how you do it. You give a little feedback. Okay. Now, I want to also share this next little concept, and then I'm going to pause and get some thoughts and feedback from the group. One thing that will suck the life out of you in regards to ideas is having small ones. Small ideas are the concepts that are going to get you from here to this afternoon. Something you can do either in a sitting or something you can do within a day. Small ideas have a tendency to suck the life out of you and feel like you are on a treadmill. So the best thing you can do for yourself is start having big ideas, because big ideas are cheap. Big ideas don't take a lot of time. Big ideas help you identify obstacles that eventually the small pieces can overcome. So for example, like a big idea might be, wow, how do I completely rethink the school calendar or the school day? Okay. Spending time in there will uncover all sorts of little steps along the way. So big ideas are cheap, and small ideas have a tendency to suck the life out of you. So when you have an idea, your idea surplus disorder, if you're like me, the best thing to do is pop that into your brain, evaluate it. Is that a small idea that I could, in theory, solve in a day or a week? Or is it a big idea that's going to involve a bunch of people? So there's a great article here on ideas and having some of the bigger ideas. I love that. So some 3 musts for a big idea is capturing imagination, being curious, and really seeking to transform, not make incrementally better, but really transform. Okay. All right. I'm going to pause. I've been talking a lot. I'm ill prepared without a bottle of water for talking for 30 minutes. And I figured it'd be time for me to pause and you guys to jump in and ask a question, maybe put something in the chat if you are somebody that likes to process that way. But I'm going to mute myself and allow somebody to jump in with either an aha moment or a learning, or maybe a yes and that you'd like to add on to the concept of an idea.
I think the difference between, thinking about an idea as small or big can be really challenging for a lot of people who think their big idea might actually be a small one and need a little bit of encouragement to see that their idea might be bigger. Like if you're working on a project that's like a physical product, how do you see that as, something that's not necessarily like small in nature? Is if, you have a thing and your problem is solved, versus you have a thing that just solved a big challenge for people that might produce some additional smaller challenges that you can continue to develop and work on.
Thanks for saving me from the silence, Devin.
That's right.
I appreciate you, brother.
Silent savior.
That's right. Somebody else jump in.
I have a question. I was just reading a post not too long ago where sometimes my big fear, I do have people that I trust, people that I can go to and say, hey, this is that crazy thing. How do you share your idea without someone taking your idea and fully developing your idea? Like that's always a fear of mine. I have great people that I can turn to and get their feedback, but sometimes you want to like venture out and get, feedback from others. Like how do you protect your ideas from that?
Oh, Nicole, I love that. That was actually, so I was lucky enough to be selected as a mentor for an innovator. And we had a long disagreement. I'll leave it at that, a gentle disagreement about that exact concept. I come from the mindset of people have their own problems and they're not going to steal yours because they have enough. So I'm often of the mindset of like, share your ideas far, share it wide, share it loud, share it proud. If we get into the situation where somebody's going to actually steal your idea, that means that they have more access than you. That must mean that they have more resources than you. And gosh, that they also have more initiative than you. And Nicole, I don't think anybody can beat you on any of those, because that takes a lot. And I think all of us, especially as innovators, we're already way far ahead of the curve in many different ways. So I'm of the mindset of sharing it as many times as possible. Now, my mentee disagreed with me, and then eventually came around to getting to the concept of being willing to share. When she started sharing her ideas, she found a programmer, and that programmer helped her make the app that exists today. And it would have never happened unless she was willing to put herself out there, to be vulnerable, and be able to nudge the world forward. And I feel like was sort of her aha moment of moving it out there. Oh, a bunch of things happened in the chat and I missed all of it. Love that. Good. Okay. So anyway, I feel like sharing it is the key. But if somebody disagrees with me, I encourage you to put it in the chat or unmute and say, no, McGee, you are wrong. This is exactly, you've got to keep your ideas private. You have to keep them hidden. You have to keep them under a lock and key. I'm on the opposite end of that spectrum. I think it needs air.
Sarah brings up a point, kind of what Dave was talking about, maturity. Like, how do you know it's even ready for feedback? I guess quite a few people just have that time question, and when should I do this? So to add on to Nicole's thought, when might you start that? At the earliest stage, do you think, just to even get feedback on it before it grows anymore?
So, and my answer to that, maybe we have other answers in the room that would like to give their feedback. I would love that. Is I will share the concept of the deck of cards that I've been sharing, that I shared earlier with you. I've been pitching that idea for about 6 months. And I don't know if you noticed it, but as I was talking through it, no one in this group jumped into the chat and said, oh my God, that deck of cards would solve this problem. Here's exactly how that's going to happen. So what does that tell the group? That 26 of the best educators in the world don't think that deck of cards is like a really great idea. I think that tells me that maybe either my pitch isn't ready or it's not the right solution. So recognizing that I want to get it out there, I want to share it, especially in its unrefined sense, and try to get as much feedback as possible. And by the way, feedback doesn't have to be like I made a Google form and emailed it to somebody and said, what do you think? Feedback is just right here. I said something, nobody responded, it was crickets. All right, that's great feedback. All right, it's not ready for public consumption, so that's okay.
I like what Kristen pulled out of the article of just kind of a spot check for your idea. Does it capture my imagination? Does it make me curious? Does it offer me the opportunity for transformation? So some cool things from that article you shared. That was a great one.
Yeah, I absolutely love that article. And I'm a big fan of the concept of the Magic Castle Hotel in Los Angeles. If any of you have seen that, it is, what I would call a 2-star hotel, but gets 5-star reviews. And some of the concepts around that really is they do the unique and the different things so well. And they're niche and they're fun and they're whimsical. So how do you bring those sort of concepts into the idea in order for the idea to take root and take hold? Like the thing that they do really well is they have a popsicle helpline. So if you are at the pool and you require a popsicle because it's hot, that popsicle is delivered to you in a very unique way by you picking up the phone and letting them know the color of popsicle that you would like, and all that sort of stuff. So you pulled that out in the chat. I saw that, different beats better in a lot of ways. So try to find that unique and fun way to do the thing. All right. Other questions, comments, things that you want to? Yes, the book of Power of Moments. I love that book. Kristen, nice feedback. If you have not checked out The Power of Moments, that is an amazing book by the Heath brothers. So good, and talks about that. So when we talked a little earlier around like the company that I made with our colleagues is called Connected Learning. And the main thing that we focus on is that concept of the power of moments. So any teacher can go to any professional development, but how does it make it unique? How does it make it special? How do you have that popsicle experience? So that way that interaction keeps people coming back. Love that. Nice job, Kristen, for bringing that up. John, yes, the truth about ideas, it takes more than one idea. Yeah, totally. That's why we do in all the innovator workshops that yes and concept, that ability and that willingness to engage in that improv activity of yes anding an idea will allow you to get to one of the coolest things that you've seen. Okay, last little section here is talking about a company. So there's some key questions about making a company that I want you to just consider as you are going through here, and as you're kind of going along the routes. So why did I choose to make what we were doing a company? Well, we were doing one in-person professional development thing a year. So we would host a conference, people would come, and we would do the thing, whatever that in-person conference is. And one of the things we recognize is that in order to do that in-person event, we had to maybe protect ourselves a little bit because at the end of the day, somebody slips and falls, that may come back to the person hosting the event. So we needed to think about what are some of the protections we needed to put in place in order to make sure that if somebody has a bad experience with my widget, if my product blows up, burns, etc., and so forth, damages their home, how am I keeping my 4-year-old, 6-year-old from ensuring that they have food on the table and all that sort of good stuff? So how do you kind of protect yourself through some of those different scenarios? So if it is a company, will you run it or will somebody else? So my goal with my company is at some point in time, it's so successful that they fire me. That is my goal. I am working to try and get fired. Why? Because they recognize that I can't do what I need to do in order for my company to continue on because I've got a full-time job. Okay. Then the other concept is, are you working to make a job for yourself? Are you ready to leave the teaching game and move into the next edge of your career, or the next part of your career, in starting this company and making a job for yourself? Well, how you make that decision will change the way your company is formed. So those are things to think about. So one of the pieces of the puzzle is, when you are relying on making a decision for your family to eat, you're going to make a different decision than if you have no sort of pieces of the puzzle tied to the decision that you make. So one of the great pieces of advice is don't quit your day job. Okay. Keep doing your day job and do your other things in your nights, weekends, free time that you are able. Because one of the things you learn is that you make very different decisions when your family's welfare depends on it, or your own welfare depends on it. And when you make different decisions, it may not be the right ones, and they have much bigger impact. So how will you get started? In my case, I wanted to form an LLC, so I went and asked a bunch of people in my network, how do you start a company? Because I had no idea. And what does it mean? What does LLC even stand for? Right? That's where I started, and I had needed to figure those things out. And eventually, I found through a friend of a friend of a friend, a lawyer who can help me do some of the paperwork and some of the pieces that need to exist. There are a ton of great resources online, but sometimes you just need to talk to somebody, and that's key. Another piece to consider is, will it be a for-profit or a not-for-profit? So we chose to be a not-for-profit, a 501c3 organization here in the United States. And the reason why we chose to do that is because we wanted to make sure that if we're serving schools, we're serving teachers, and we're serving kids, we didn't want it to eventually for us to think about how much money did we make. We want it to be about the service to who we were trying to make better. So once you've converted an idea to a company, here's a great article to help you get through that next piece of the puzzle. Forbes does a great job to talk about 12 things to convert a great idea into an actual company. And there's a ton of great advice there and really great sort of check boxes to keep in mind. Okay, some great ideas is say no more than you say yes, and don't raise money. Learn how to sell your idea. And that's been really, really, really tough for me to be like, okay, I know I've got a nonprofit. I know we want to do the thing, whether it's an in-person or an online event. How do I raise money in order to do it? And then that article did a great job of shifting my thinking to, I'm trying to sell this idea. Wouldn't it be cool if educators came together and did this, or whatever the thing is? Okay, so really starting to sell the idea versus trying to raise money for the different concept.
So Chris, there's a couple of sentiments in the chat just about uneasiness about that leap. So if a lot of innovators are, side hustling and, working on, where it is just project or passion project and something, events you might be hosting while you're teaching, or an online product or whatever that might be. But there seems to be some uneasiness about, when does it create a company? Does it, it looks like Priscilla said, when I think about it or selling it, I feel weird. And that might just be kind of the educator's complex, like kind of what you said about selling things can feel odd when so maybe nonprofit might be something. Sarah's mentioned losing touch with education by going down the, business pathway. Any thoughts around when it should turn from side hustle? Maybe not all ideas are ready to be or deserve to be a company, or, any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I'm going to make a comment, but I also think the room has a ton of great feedback on that too. So I'm going to say a little bit, but then I also want to pause and see if the room, because there are a couple people that have kind of thought through this for them. So the real answer is that is up to your comfort level. So it depends. I know it's a horrible answer, but it's so true. It totally depends on your feeling of how you're trying to do this. So one of the people that I reached out to is a really successful entrepreneur, and he looked at me and just asked the question, are you doing this for you? Like, do you want to run this company, or are you creating it so that way it exists and it's over here? Like, what's the purpose? Are you trying to make additional income? Like, once you know what it is, what your purpose is, then those decisions will definitely get easier. Priscilla asked, but have you ever felt this way? Which way? That I didn't know? I definitely always don't know. Let me see if I can find Priscilla's question.
I think she said as if she feels weird selling it, as if I could be wrong in some way.
Oh yeah, and I am okay with feeling weird, and I think that is definitely a real feeling, and that is something, Priscilla, you are spot on, that it makes you I have no other better word to describe it but icky. Like, it just makes you feel uneasy about selling a concept or idea. But I put in the chat that Dan Pink's book To Sell is Human really recognizes that all of us are selling everything, whether we're selling ourselves as a support service, as a tech coach, or an integrationist.
I will share the Google Forms after. If we
tell me, Frederick.
I was going to share the Google Forms. That's good. Okay. All right. So that concept of yes, you do feel weird. Yes, you're gonna feel weird. It's okay. And recognizing that the best ideas need air to breathe. Austin Kleon has a great book on keep going, and one of the things he talks about is about that monsters, they hate fresh air. And I love that concept. The monsters hate fresh air. So when you have a great idea, or you're feeling awkward or weird, get that monster out into the world. Talk to people about it. Literally go outside, okay? Engage in those different experiences that you can. But yes, feeling weird and selling it is hard, but I know that you can do it. I know that you can do it.
All right, we got about 5 minutes left, Chris.
Nice. Okay. So I love that you guys talked about the imposter syndrome, because that was kind of at the end of my talk here, of like, that is a real thing. And you have to recognize that is a real experience that you're going to have. So keep in mind that you're going to feel inadequate. You're going to feel that you don't have the right steps, the right tools. Like I said at the beginning, I never took a single business class, and am learning every single day how to make a budget, how to the concepts of returning on investment or an LLC and all those different things, to live in the discomfort. We talked at the beginning around the entrepreneurial mindset. And one of the big pieces about the entrepreneurial mindset is really engaging in those challenging and uncomfortable behaviors. So recognizing, if it's as simple as drawing a circle on a sheet of paper and drawing a bigger concentric circle around that on a sheet of paper, starting out with what are the things that you're comfortable with about your job, your idea, your solution, your company. What are the things that are just outside your comfort zone that you're going to stretch yourself to accomplish over the next week or so? And then what are the things that are outside that concentric circle that are things you're just not ready for? They're things that you're uncomfortable with. Maybe you don't know how to do it yet. You don't have the right words to say or to put them together. But really just simply doing the activity of the concentric circles on what is in your comfort zone, what's just outside your comfort zone, and then what is really, so far, I'm not ready for it. Okay. And then challenge yourself within those circles, those concentric circles, to find experiences and ways to do that. Okay. Right on. So I love that imposter syndrome concept. I'll add one last thing and then see if there's any other questions here is, no one will ever tell you this in the entire process, but this concept of starting a company, of having an idea, of selling a solution, is lonely as all get out. I want to say all inappropriate words right now, but I won't, because we're in a professional setting. But it is so lonely, and what I mean by this is, you're in any of these situations, you're the chief everything officer. Like, you are in charge of thinking around what color your logo is going to be, and nobody cares about that but you. So recognizing that you will do everything, people will not help you, and oftentimes, there's a great concept around the crabs in a bucket. In any bucket, you don't have to put a lid on crabs inside of a bucket, because when one crab starts to get out of the bucket, the other crab will pull them down. All right, that is a biological fact. You don't have to put lids on top of a bucket of crabs. And that happens in our profession often. One of us really starts doing some really unique things, and immediately the people that are around you will turn on you and judge whatever idea it is that you have. That's going to happen. It's lonely and it stinks. And there's no other nice way to say that. But it's the thing that's going to change the world. It's the thing that's going to change your school. It's the thing that's going to change your communities. And those are the reasons why I do the things that I do, is like, I want to make a dent in this world in some way, shape, or form. I don't care what it is. It may be a dent in one little community, but I want to make that dent. So keep that in mind, that jealousy and fear and judgment from others are going to happen. And I think the hardest thing that I've had to realize is that, I'm going to lose a friend or two in this process. and that's going to happen. And it may be because I did something wrong, and a lot of times it is. Like, I said the wrong thing, I did this wrong, and owning up to that. But it's also that, like, they weren't that good of friends to begin with. They're not your champions whenever things get tough, and that's okay. And then finally, with that, no one tells you that it gets lonely concept is we often compare our chapter 1 with somebody else's chapter 10. So we sit and we scroll through Facebook and we scroll through Twitter, and we see how somebody's out there and just killing it and doing amazing things, and you just started your idea, and you also have, you know, in my case, 2 small children, and you just thought you'd be farther along than you are, and comparing yourself, your chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 10 is a surefire way to get yourself into a difficult and probably lonely situation. So, not to leave on a downer.
So many nice sentiments of "don't worry, you'll make more friends." So I love it, Chris. It's so inspirational. Michelle mentioned she really needed this today. Thanks, Michelle. And thanks, Chris. This was really wonderful. Are we able to share your document with all those links in it to everybody?
Oh, absolutely. Yep, all my little notes and scribblings.
I love it. We'll send that out, everyone. I did want to, we have 2 giveaways. We've got one from Connected Learning, Chris's Business Stories of Change, Book 1, Designing Successful Systems. So we're going to give our first door prize away. And I'm just scrolling through the chat with my finger, rolling, and it goes to Nicole. Yay! Nicole, just email info@certifiedinnovators with your address, and we'll send Chris's book to you. Whoop, whoop. And our second one is Power of Moments. Since that was brought up, it always is nice to give Heath presents to people. So next present goes to Kristen. Yay! Cool. Email us, guys, and we'll get your door prizes out. Huge thanks to Chris. So many great nuggets. Chris, you're a nugget factory. Like, everything you say is a hashtag, and I love it. Seriously, though, thank you for taking the time away from all of your business and work and kids to be here today. And thanks to all of you for sharing your thoughts and questions and fears and ideas. We'll be back again in just a few weeks with Alice, who's on the call for user experience design. If they have any questions, Chris, they can reach out to you on Twitter. If you want to put your handle in there, because I'm sure we have some follow-up questions. But we got to close out because we have a midpoint meetup for our SWE 19 crew. But thank you, Chris. And if everyone wants to unmute and say thanks, Chris, and hello and goodbye, let's hear it. 1, 2, 3.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Not fucking at all.
Bye, bye.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys. Thank you. We'll send the recording in
Thanks a lot
as well.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Chris. Thanks, Wendy.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.